So welcome everybody to the Future Trends Forum. My name is Brian Alexander. I'm your host and cat herder for the hour. I'm very glad to see and hear all of you here today. We have a lot to cover, from digital analytics to digital literacy, so let's get everything rolling. To begin with, let me just explain a bit about this project. We are an offshoot of the Future Trends in Technology and Education project. If you don't know that, that's a monthly report which takes a look at trend lines in education technology and tries to use them to extrapolate the future, especially of higher education. So if it's new to you, go to ftte.us and check it out. Now, we can't do this work without the help of very generous sponsors, so I want to name two of them. The first is NiserNet from New York State, a great networking organization, both literally in terms of cyber infrastructure and socially, in that they have a terrific network of CIOs across New York State. So thank you very much for their sponsorship. And we'd also like to thank Shindig, because Shindig makes this possible through their technology and their people. The technology we're using now, and I'll explain, but also their people who are doing great work behind the scenes. Everyone from Steve to Zach and Christopher, you guys just do wonderful work. So let me explain where we are before I introduce the guest. This is the Shindig video conferencing environment. If you are used to video conferencing, this has some similar attributes, but some things that are unique. Right here where we are at the top of the screen, this is the stage where you can see myself, and over here you can see a PowerPoint presentation. That PowerPoint presentation will be removed in just a minute and replaced with the shining face of our guest for today. This is where presentations come from. The bottom half of the screen, where you folks are, is what I think of as the participant swarm. This is where everybody who is viewing, listening, watching, interacting gets to be represented. If you look, you'll see individual icons. Sometimes they're live video feeds, sometimes they're sketchy cartoon outlines, but either way, each one represents a person or a connection. Indeed, we've had between one person and an entire faculty in some of these. Now, as we go, you'll see individual icons move back and forth as people enter, leave, move around. If you want to have a quiet conversation with somebody, click on their icon. The two of you will get merged into a little audio bubble and you can talk, just like putting your head next to each other if you're sitting in an auditorium. Now, most of the conversation is going to come from the top, from the stage, but you have four different ways of contributing and participating. And let me just introduce them to you. The first is we have a chat box. Some of you have already been using it. So if you haven't used it yet, mouse over your icon and you'll see a little box that says I am chat. Click on that and you'll have a chat box that can be used. So you can have a back channel running throughout the hour, and you can talk to individuals as well. Now, if your mic is working and your camera is working and you feel like talking to us, we'll go all the way to the bottom right corner of the screen. You'll see a couple of orange dots. One of them has the word raise and a picture of a hand. If you click that, that tells us that you want to come up on stage, which is awesome. Click that, you get in line, and when the time is right, we'll pull someone off stage, probably me, and pull you up instead. So you get to talk to our guest, Phil. We love that. That happens a lot, and you'll see how smoothly it works. Now, maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe your mic doesn't work, or you're in a crowded environment, or you're shy, whatever. That's fine. And you want to type a question. Click the Ask Orange button, and the question will get in the queue, and we'll read it out loud and display it on the screen for everyone to read. And if that's not enough, you can see we really believe in interactivity here at the Future Trends Forum. If that's not enough, go over to Twitter and use the hashtag FTTE, and you'll be able to add questions or comments. In fact, if you take a look there, you'll see people already asking, making observations, chiming in, getting meta. That's another back channel they'll be running through the hour. So you have a lot of ways to interact, and we're really glad to see you participate. So speaking of participation, let's introduce our guest for the day. We have Phil Ventimiglia, who probably is more often known as Phil than not. Phil is the Chief Innovation Officer at Georgia State University. He has a fascinating, unusual position, which we're going to talk about, and he focuses on a few really interesting areas, especially of interest to the Future Trends Forum. They include data analytics and also digital literacy. So, Shindig folks, why don't you bring down that PowerPoint presentation and haul Phil up?
Hello.
Welcome, Phil.
Thank you. Thanks
Very
for
good.
having me.
Well, we're glad you could make it, especially during the busy time of fall semester.
I'm happy to be here.
Well,
And you're right.
good.
I usually go by Phil or Phil V.
Phil V. That's good. There's a wonderful scholar not too far from you at UVA named Siva Vadhayanathan, who everyone just calls Siva. Right?
Right.
Well, if you could tell us just to begin with, what does a chief innovation officer do? That's an unusual position in higher education. What does that position entail?
Yeah, so it was a new role. It was created just over 2 years ago. I was the first person to inhabit the role. And the reason why the role was created was there was recognition at the most senior levels of the university, the president and his cabinet, that technology was really starting to impact the university in a very strategic way, not just the operations in the university, but how and what we teach, and really the entire enterprise of the university. And so when they went to go look for a new CIO, they consulted with some organizations and came back with a recommendation that they really needed not a chief information officer, but a chief innovation officer that has all the responsibilities of a traditional CIO in terms of managing the technology of the university, but additionally is the strategic visionary driving the future of higher education and representing how that's being impacted from technology, right? Really recognizing that they did not want to take a back seat in terms of the disruptions that are happening because of digitization within education and higher education specifically. So it created this new role that sat on the cabinet, reported to the president,
Hmm.
and had broader responsibilities. And really, that is the initial genesis of it. But really, a big part of my role was also then to go define what that means. And so, as I entered the role just over 2 years ago, we massaged the organization to include, again, not just the traditional IT operations, but also picked some pieces that were across the university and then augmented it to go create what initially we called the Center for Instructional Innovation, but most recently then went and added even some more parts of our university to create a fully integrated Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning that provides everything from instructional design and all of our instructional and pedagogical tools to all the learning spaces, classrooms, and collaboration spaces. Also has the faculty there focusing on the scholarship of teaching and leadership, really a fully integrated set of resources to help us go and redesign what the paradigm for education is in the future.
Well, that last huge, redesigning education for the future. That's fantastic. Um, I mean, I was going to say it sounds like you're in a kind of CIO role, but this is a little different. This sounds like you're including academic computing as well as the kind of paracurricular centers, like as you mentioned, the Excellence in Teaching and Learning Center and Instructional Innovation.
Yeah, absolutely, right. With again recognizing that the technology is fundamental to the university, and again it's the operations. But what we talk about now is how do we create the digital university, right? And that doesn't mean an online university. It's a digitally enabled university that encompasses how we teach, right, using digital technology in our pedagogy, right, and flipping the classrooms, hybridization, adaptive learning, learning analytics, the what we teach, which has really been driven by digital literacy and introducing that skill set into our core curriculum. And then it gets into things like enabling anytime, anywhere university where students can interact with their faculty, their peers through a variety of tools, just like we're doing today, right? They don't always have to be on the physical campus. It incorporates things like the student journey, which we started with the use of predictive analytics to drive student success, but more and more students expect an Amazon-like experience. And so how can we go do that, throughout the way that they interact with the university, right? Make it much more like they expect in the consumer side of their lives. Clearly collaboration and communication is a big part of that digital university. And then fundamentally, what we have to go focus on with all that is then cybersecurity. And so yes, I have sort of, the left and right side of my brain in terms of, worrying about the day-to-day operations of the university and how do we deliver a secure, efficient, technology environment, but at the same time drive innovation in terms of not just how we're operating that university, but how are we actually conceptualizing the functions of the university in terms of our teaching, our learning, and our research.
That's a huge remit. Um, how many
I have a
staff
really
actually
good team.
report to you?
I have an excellent team. I mean, it's a large team, about 150 full-time folks. We also have another, depending on the day of the week, and about 80 to 100 temps that we also have, mostly students, in our labs and whatnot that are helping us, as well as helping us with innovation projects. But it's really not just about the staff. It's having the right people and putting people from a variety of disciplines, right? Not just the hard technologies of operating a data center and operating desktop computing, but also thinking about, so if you think about like learning spaces, right? Bringing the folks that also understand how do you design those spaces, bringing them all together to really create, a flexible, adaptable, and really innovative solution in terms of our classroom spaces, but also thinking about other spaces as learning spaces, right? And so let's not just go and put digital signage or some comfy chairs in some of our new open spaces, right? Some of our lounge type areas. Let's really take a disciplined approach and bring in all the right folks in the room to think about how that's going to impact the students in the most possible way. And so I think that's really the power of it, is having that multidisciplinary approach so that we're really looking at what does the university provide from our key customers standpoints, our key constituents, which is our students, and the research that we do, and those organizations that we support.
And you've been doing this for 2 years.
Just over 2 years, yeah. And it's been a fabulous ride. We've made a lot of great strides, a lot more to be done, but uh, we've really, I think, made a lot of progress.
Well, I wonder. Oh my gosh, I have all kinds of questions. But let me just say again for the community, everybody listening, if you have any comments or questions for Phil, again, please feel free to click either of those orange buttons if you want to get up on stage or type us a question, or use the chat box where Vicky is already writing up a story. We've already had a couple of comments on Twitter. So before we go to those, let me just ask a related question, Phil. We had a guest a couple of weeks ago from just north of you from Georgetown University.
Mhm.
Eddie Maloney is leading a project to turn academic computing into an academic discipline. It's a very, very interesting drive. And what you said reminded me of that. Let me just explain. You mentioned that the Center for, let me get it right, the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning,
Yeah.
which includes people who are not only looking at technology, but also at learning and the science of learning. Do you think, I mean, do you think you're seeing that kind of movement, that professionalization, that disciplinary evolution of academic computing happen at Georgia Tech?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you see that with really the creation of the instructional design, right? We have a whole instructional design team. We, in our College of Education, we have a PhD in instructional design in that area. And if then MIT recently released a report on the future of education, and they actually came up with a new term. They called it actually a learning engineer, right? And bringing in that professionalization in terms of engineering, in terms of the learning process, and by trade I am an electrical engineer, so I picked up on that right away. I really like that concept of it, but because really it is about the entire educational experience, and the learning or instructional design. In some cases, people may conceive of that as just making something pretty, right? A designer of a web page, right, was what most people probably have in the back of their mind. But really, it is the design, the concept, the creation, and the execution of an entire learning program, however big or small you define that. That
Sure.
could be, the
Hmm.
creation of a module of a class. It could be the creation of an entire, class itself, or the redesign of an entire, excuse me, of a entire program, right? To completely rethink a program from how do we deliver it, what type of content, and things like that. And so we are seeing that, and we're seeing now that we've, I think, been 2 years within this journey, the recognition at the university level that having this Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning, those sort of resources are so critical that we're being brought to the table anytime someone's thinking about, something new, and how do we go and create a new graduate program, or how do we think about um, improving DFW rates within a program area. People are exploring creation of open educational resources, working with us, and we go in and also have programs to go actively recruit folks. We have a whole program we call Digital Champions, which we go and bring faculty in, have a small buyout. Of time, or that they can be used for professional development, that originally was to go and digitize their classes and however they see fit. But as we evolved that, we've really focused it on the creation of open educational resources, and leverage of adaptive learning, which in our minds goes sort of hand in hand.
That's a huge development, and it sounds like your ambit really goes beyond the normal CIO level and deeper than the what the chief academic or academic computing people can do. Before I say anything more about that, though, we have a couple of questions that have come up.
Sure.
One is from Scott F. At VMware, and he asks, as you emerge as a digital university, how do you feel that people and processes must change to adapt?
Yeah, it's a great question. So first, the biggest piece is always the in any change management situation is the people, right? And so the first thing that we really had to focus on, especially when you come from a core IT standpoint, is really becoming, very collaborative and a trusted partner with the rest of the business. And the first step is, having a role like mine where you have a seat at the table, and also the recognition that you're a business leader, not just an IT leader. And then with the team, it's really about driving that mindset with them as well, and not just sitting in an office waiting for someone to call with an issue or a problem, but really going and actively meeting with peers, like in my case, meeting with the deans, meeting with the various departments around campus, and understanding what their needs are. And one of the first comments I had from one of our deans after speaking to him was, "This is the first time I had a technology person talk to me, and I didn't hear about bits and bytes and servers, because we talked about, what is the vision for the future of your college? How are you going to go deliver your programs to your students? Here's my point of view on how things are changing, and also some insight as a buyer, if you will, of university talent over the past 20 years of my career." And so changing those conversations, in terms of the people, is very important. And the process, the people really go driving the process, but the process is really our, I guess, biggest impact of the process is becoming much more nimble and agile. And there's that term within software development, but just not the pure agile methodology, but the agile notion of more of a startup mentality of doing proof of concepts, pilots, trying things out as a small scale, tweak it, figure out what works, figure out what doesn't work, do more of what works, don't stop doing what doesn't work, and then go scale them up, right? Too often, we see, and we have this, attitude within popular culture of go big or go home. In reality, usually you go home,
Mhm.
right? And also we want to, make sure that we have, we're focused on the outcomes, not the inputs. Right, and so there's been a big focus on devices within both K through 12 as well as higher education, and the the focus is let's go put devices in students' hands, not what does those devices do. And so usually, what happens is, a lot of hoopla to go buy a whole bunch of iPads, without any thinking through the pedagogy and what happens after that. And maybe the thought was if students put it underneath their pillow, they somehow wake up smarter. But that's not the reality. And so it's also changing the process of, hey, here, let's think like a startup. Let's go and do a series of experiments, um, and prove out these concepts, prove out the model, and then go and scale it up. And that's what we've done with digital literacy. We started with our honors college and 250 freshmen last year, and about 12 courses, which was actually larger than we expected just because of demand from the faculty. And now that's being expanded across the university with our biggest partner being the Robinson College of Business, embedding digital literacy within their core curriculum. We did that. The good news is our university has that sort of experimentation in their DNA. Even before I arrived, with our use of predictive analytics, that's how that manifested itself on the campus with a series of tests, figuring out how to make it work and then scaling it up. And so I think that's the key part of the process is having that ability to go and focus on experimentation, proof of concepts, pilots, and prototyping, which is really critical. And I know someone asked a question about the Staff Innovators program, and that is a program that we are developing in partnership with some of our faculty from the Robinson College of Business, as well as our Creative Media Industries Institute, to develop a self-paced online program for anyone at the university, but primarily staff and faculty, to go and learn the techniques of how do you go and develop innovation, because it's not a process of climbing to the mountain and coming down with the tablets and the 10 commandments. And so going through the process of how do you ideate, how do you go and do this experimentation, and then how do you go sell your ideas, and we're in the process of rolling that out and overlaying a whole sort of innovation competition on top of it, where then the best ideas will come into a day-long session where they can get resources to go develop those ideas and present them to myself and senior management.
It sounds like both this program in particular, as well as your entire strategy, are really infused by design thinking.
Absolutely. Yeah, we believe a lot in design thinking. And in fact, the first module that's been launched within our Staff Innovators program is based upon design thinking from IDEO.
On IDEO is really the source for a lot of this, really the big mover in that.
Yes, in
We,
fact,
we have
sometimes they think they invented design, but absolutely.
a little older than that, but yeah. We have another question. This is from Paul Baldridge from Madison, where they're probably experiencing the start of fall right now.
Yeah.
And he wants to know, has Georgia State implemented maker spaces on campus to inspire innovation? If
Yeah.
yes, is it well received? If not, why not?
So this is great. This is almost like a plant question, so I love it. So the answer is yes, we're right in the midst of that. And so, pretty interesting, because Georgia State, for those of you who don't know, based in downtown Atlanta, over 50,000 students. The downtown campus has about 35,000 students. We just merged with Perimeter College that has 5 campuses around Metro Atlanta. It's a 2-year open access institution, so that's now Perimeter College at Georgia State University. And but we do not have an engineering program. And so, yet we do have our 2 largest majors are computer science and computer information sciences. We have a lot of students that are getting involved within software development, entrepreneurship, and creating. And last year we created our Panther Hacker organization, which is our first student hacking organization. And when we kicked it off, we thought we'd need about a room for about 30 people. And then we started seeing RSVPs, which was shocking in and of itself, because most students don't RSVP to events. And then we started seeing that the RSVPs were quickly becoming greater than 50, and so we went up to a 50-person room, and then it was 75. We had about 200 people end up showing up. We had to go and move to a much larger venue. And through that, we realized that we have students that are actively engaging in maker movement, create, and coding and hacking. And so we said, okay, it makes sense to create a makerspace on campus, as well as maybe create some on our perimeter college campuses. But since we're not an engineering school, we're not going to have lathes and things like that. It's an opportunity to go and create what we call a digital makerspace. It's actually a lot cheaper, right? So let's go and put in 3D printers, um, virtual reality glasses now with HoloLens and Oculus Rift. Um, some hardware, but the electronic hardware like Arduino boards, things like that. And
Mm-hmm.
and we said we want to make this, student driven. We want it to be something where faculty can teach in the space and that they can pitch to us to come do it. And as we started to conceptualize this, we had one of our faculty members from computer science also wanting to go do this. So we partnered with them and we created a proposal within our technology fee to go fund it out of the technology fee. The technology fee has to go and benefit students. And so as part of our process, we have a student review board that reviews the proposals and decides which ones get funded. As soon as we presented the digital makerspace concept, the students were, absolutely, they wanted this and they wanted it, as soon as possible. So we're in the process right now of, we have the space, we have the design. The architect has just finalized it. We are putting it in place right now, and we hope to have it up and running either right before our spring semester or right at the beginning of the spring semester. And then, like I said, we are going to be having a process, just sort of like with the digital champions, where we'll have professors also propose to be able to use it as a instructional space, not just as a maker space, ad hoc, which will be as well. But we want it to be used instructionally.
Well, it sounds like instruction, learning, student orientation is central to just about everything you're doing. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I came from private sector, and I actually came from product development after a long career at Dell and NCR. And so, I've always been focused on, how does the end user use our technology, and really that's the approach, and why the university selected me for this role is because, really my job is about um, figuring out the paradigm or the dominant design for education, and it really is the same process, the same um, challenge as any new product development challenge. Is just the product is education.
hmm, hmm. Nice. The educational experience. I had more questions, but Jeannie Kim Han had a question, which is again an innovation question, very precise. She asks, have you changed processes as a result of innovation thinking that have improved efficiencies and effectiveness? You want me to read that again, or do you got that?
Yeah, no, I can. I see it. You know, on
Oh,
the
there it
screen.
is. Okay, good.
Yeah. So there's a variety of things that we've done, both on the pedagogy and education side, as well as on the research computing side, and just on the standard IT operations. So I guess so for the first example on the education side, the biggest process that we're probably impacting is really going and really focusing on driving a lot more hybridization into the programs, right? And so instead of and with that, flipping many of the classrooms so that instead of going and having students spend 3 hours a week having someone talk to them and then going home and trying to struggle with that stats problem or whatever it may be without any peers or faculty member and expert there to help them, really, we want to optimize those learning moments, and those 3 hours of class time is extremely precious, right, and extremely valuable. And so can we create much more compelling content that is digitized, modularized, and the students go and view that outside of the classroom, so that when they come into the classroom, they're spending that time interactively working with their peers, working with their faculty members. And as I mentioned before, this holistic design of the educational experience, when you do that, you also redesign the classrooms into an interactive classroom with, getting rid of the sort of the sage on the stage design and everything being on wheels and modular, and a much more flexible environment. So we're doing that.
Say,
Yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to ask more about that, but Jeannie wants to come up on stage. Zach, why don't
Okay.
you kick me off and bring her up instead?
Sorry, I had myself muted.
Hi, Jeannie.
Good afternoon or good morning. I was curious, have you been considering the way that you're developing, I guess, your unit and the whole area, much like an incubator itself, to be able to create the environment in which these kinds of innovations, the technological on the pedagogical side, the ways that the university does business, et cetera? And if so, are there process innovations that you've been putting into place operationally within your unit or within the university so that these things can move forward and continue?
So the answer
So
is
the
yes.
answer is yes.
We launched an initiative last year to focus on digital transformation and looking at our processes across the university that can be improved and enabled uh, through digitization. It's not, it can't be just, we're going to digitize a process, because if you digitize an ineffective process, it's just going to be ineffective now without paper, right? And so we are going and looking at across our processes. For example, one of the ones that we are tackling right now is the whole student communications process. Right, probably resonates in terms of being very disconnected with various academic units, departments, all communicating, primarily through email to students, and not being coordinated. Right, and we have a process that handles broadcast emails that go out to the entire students and campus, and that runs through our team. But when you think about mass communication, something that may not go out to the entire student body, but goes out to an entire college or an entire program, those aren't coordinated, and that creates confusion and a lot of times a lot of noise when we probably should be clearing the deck right before registration and things like that, so the only messages going out to students are coming from the registration and financial offices. And so what we've been doing is we've been leveraging Salesforce and a series of experiments with various departments with Salesforce, working with their marketing cloud product, and showing and proving out the ease of use, but also the power of the data, right? Because the problem with just standard, email blasts is that there's no data back on responses. It's very much a shotgun approach. You're not going and being able to go and collect data on who opened certain responses, pull in data on, from our banner system, so that if we have a initiative like we just launched a little over a year ago in entrepreneurship, we can target students who took certain classes, right? I have a lot more focused way we go communicate, and we did that through a series of pilots across different departments, and now we're working to say, okay, we've proven this out, we see the value, let's go create a process where we manage this at the enterprise level, and we can go manage our communication in a much more holistic, and it's not to go and control it, but again, to think about it from the student standpoint and not bombard them with just a ton of emails within a short period of time. And on top of that, also then leverage the capabilities to go and offer more flexibility. So create a messaging hub in conjunction with that, where students can select what's the best way they would like to be communicated to. Because even if they want email, maybe they want it their Gmail account. Probably not their Yahoo account, because that's probably been hopefully canceled by now. But maybe they want it to Gmail. Maybe they want to get a text message. Maybe they want Twitter or Snapchat in the future, right? But allow them to choose how they want to be communicated. So we do have a process and a council that's been put together to go and look at those and really champion those sort of ideas. And then organizationally, what we've built is we do have a small team that is really focused on rapid prototyping and rapid development. And so in addition to, and that's within our applications team. There was a question earlier, and I might as well just address it now, just about our organization. And our organization isn't probably fundamentally different than a lot of research universities, but the way that we're structured as I mentioned, we have that Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning, and as we've evolved that reports to me as well as reports to our vice provost uh, for academic affairs, and so we have that shared responsibility, which I think is important as you go and drive change. That I cannot be the one person championing this vision of the digital university. We have to go bring in folks from the other parts of the university. So that was a purposeful evolution that we did this year as we expanded it to the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning and changed that name from the Center for Instructional Innovation. And then we have a research solutions team that is responsible for driving our programs within research solutions, and they're doing a lot of work to create portals to make it easy to spin up research activities using cloud-based services like AWS and Microsoft Azure. They effectively also, act as a very small prototyping team to help faculty members or researchers go and create the work that they need to go and compete for grants and then implement their grants. Then we have an infrastructure, and that is a combination of what was our networking and server and data center teams, but really thinking about a converged infrastructure. We have our technology service team, which encompasses our help center. We have an application development team that supports all of our application, but also has within there is our rapid prototyping team to do any custom work, as well as support proof of concepts and experiments. And then we have a security team and a marketing communications team. And then finally, which is obviously critical, we have an operations team that incorporates all of our program management, HR, finance, and all the operations of the overall organization.
Do you have a org chart that's publicly available for this?
We can make one available, and so we can. No, I think we do have something on the innovation.gsu.edu website, but we can make sure it's clear and bring it to the forefront.
Well, Ginny, that was a terrific question, because you just really gave Phil the opportunity to really dive deeply into his practice at Georgia State. I have to pause this for a second, though. This is the time in the Future Transform when the guest and I climb down off the stage and interact with the rest of you. This is the mingle session. And I wanted to prime that conversation with a question. Phil's been describing an unusual take on structuring innovation while drawing on a lot of ideas that we've been talking about, everything from maker spaces to design thinking to hybridization. And I just want to ask if you could take 5 minutes and talk with each other about how are you seeing these methods appearing at your institution? So at your college, your museum, your library, your university, are you seeing design thinking like this? Are you seeing hybridized teams? Are you seeing digital champions being unfolded? Do you have a chief innovation officer? So let's take 5 minutes and think about this, and then we'll regroup and carry on. So if Shindig folks, if you could kick Phil and I off into the crowd, we can start talking. Sometimes going up on stage here is like being beamed up in Star Trek.
Yeah.
You get to dematerialize and rematerialize. I want to thank us talking to. I had a good conversation coming. Phil, what did you find out? What did you and your chatmates talk about?
So I was talking to Jeannie at one of the California State System schools, and they're considering putting a similar role in place. So it was very interesting to talk about the culture that we had in place. One of the things I was talking to Jeannie about was that culture is very difficult to go and change. And so, one of the things that was very important as I went and evaluated this opportunity was evaluating the university in terms of its readiness to have such a role. because if the university wasn't ready, especially in their heart, even if they understood it intellectually, you're not. It's going to be very, very difficult to go change that. And I've been in the roles before where you're trying to be that one person that is going to lead the charge and break through the wall. And usually you just get really bloodied trying to get through that wall. And so it's very important that the institution and the organization is ready for such a change and is struggling with the how, not the what. And so we talked a lot about that, and it sounds like their institution may be ready to go implement the how.
Well, good. Reminds me of, is it the Phil Drucker argument that culture eats strategy for breakfast?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's
So
exactly right.
our group was talking about some of the different ways people were creating positions like yours,
Yeah.
and how we're seeing more of this in the corporate world and not as much in the academic world. But we have another question here from Future Transform stalwart George Station. He wants to know first, these are two different questions. Let's just take them one at a time. First, is there common ground across the Honors College read the definition of digital literacy? Now, that's a great question. George, we'll hold on to the second question for a minute, but what do you think?
So when we went and launched the initiative, we spent a lot of time to develop our own definition of digital literacy. If you go onto our website or go read the article in EDUCAUSE, we define it, but very quickly there's 6 elements, and they build upon each other. It's really a spectrum that we define digital literacy. So it starts with finding and vetting information online. And then it goes to being able to see problems from a digital perspective. After that, it's how to become self-directed learners. Beyond that, it's obtaining digital solutions. Then once you can obtain digital solutions, about how you learn software quickly. And ultimately, sort of like at the Maslow's highest level, it's designing and creating digital solutions on your own. And so that was the definition that we put together to go ground us as we went down the initiative.
Oh, it's a great, well, first, George, it's a great question. And let me ask, that's a powerful definition, Phil. So this is one that you derived through conversation with many people on campus?
Yeah, and really with the core set of folks that were developing the program. So myself and George Pullman, who's a faculty member, and actually had written a book about digital literacy in the context of rhetoric and writing, which is his specialty. He's a professor of English. So we nominated him for the first digital literacy class, and then him and I, then bringing in some of the other faculty members and others that developed the first set of classes, we created this definition.
Oh, it's fascinating. Now, and I can follow up later because I've been doing exactly this kind of project myself. But
Yeah.
George follows us up with a question, which was any interest in or pushback on DLI elsewhere at GSU?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, and it gets back to sort of connecting the mind and the heart, right? And it's always so critical to go do that, because people can get their heads wrapped around things, but even when they understand it intellectually, if they don't believe it within their heart, they can never cross that chasm. And so we didn't have much of a challenge intellectually once we went and started talking to people, right? Because you could have a conversation, which we did with faculty, like for example from history, and talk about, hey, tell us about your discipline. How do you do your research, your work today? And they'll start going into, well, we really don't go do any research anymore in the physical stacks. We use a whole bunch of online archives and tools. Most of our work is all done digitally. And then you'd go back and ask, well, how do you teach your students? Oh, we teach our students to go into the physical stacks. We don't teach them anything about the digital aspects of research, right? And so very quickly people can say, oh yeah, that doesn't make sense. But then it's, oh gosh, but I'm not comfortable teaching that way. How do I go do that? So then you start to have these barriers. And so we made sure that we had everything to go take away those barriers. So one of the first ones was, well, our students may not have the technology needed, right? This is great. I'd love to go teach with more digital technologies in the class and digital pedagogy, but we have a student body where over half our students are on Pell Grants. They're not, even if I wanted to go do it, they can't. And we said, okay, well, let's go take that away. We're starting with 250 students. I made fun of the iPad example, but we did went and said, okay, let's go and buy devices, for 250 students. We can go afford to do that for a small population and prove it out, and work with the faculty as well as the students. Say, what kind of device do you want? And we went through and did a whole bunch of focus groups and brought them into the selection process. We selected a 2-in-1 convertible with a touch screen. And we found out that actually a lot of the students didn't even pick up the devices when we gave them for free. There's about a quarter of the students that didn't use them because they had their own device. And we found it was important, but what the biggest importance was, it took away that barrier from the faculty. Right. And now as we go and these faculty are coming back and say, hey, we want to go do this again, we're not really worried about the students, but if a student doesn't have a device, will you have one they can borrow? So it starts to change the conversation to like where I have to have this, where no, we understand most of the students have a device, but in case, let's have a backup plan. So because of course we can't afford to buy 50,000 devices for every student we have. So that was sort of the excuse or reason I can't do it. Number one, reason I can't do it. Number two is I'm just not that technically savvy. How is this going to work in the classrooms? What if the technology fails? I don't have time to go and do this. Well, they had concierge level service. I said, you have a platinum card within our Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning. Every faculty member who did that initial pilot had a dedicated instructional designer, as well as some of our student labor to go and help them do everything from creating a PowerPoint to designing a whole new project, so that and be even sit there in the first couple of lectures. Usually, actually, after the second or third, they didn't need the hand holding, but they were concerned, like, what if it breaks? Well, you have the instructional designer there. We have one of our concierge, I don't know what to call him, our special tech support person that supports the president and the cabinet. He's going to be in there. Our honors college is located in the same building as our senior administration, so we had him there in those first classroom sessions to make sure that everything went smoothly. And again, basically put that big net that you can't fall. We're going to wrap everything around you to make you successful. And that was really critical to make it work. And then once we got through it, the ones that were the most worried are also the ones who are the biggest evangelists now. And we have a set of those faculty that went back and said, we want to go create a block of digital humanities classes for the fall. Would you support that again if some of the students need to borrow a device? And I'm like, sure, absolutely.
That's a great measure of success.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
We're almost out of time, and I've got to ask one question of my own, which was, looking at your digital literacy definition in your digital literacy article, which I've linked to. I think it's a very, very important one. You and your co-author push in some really interesting directions that aren't always there. I've got to ask, do you think is coding built into digital literacy for all students? And do you think all students should learn coding, or just those who need to work with coding, if that makes sense?
It absolutely makes sense. We talk about this a lot. So what we believe is that coding does become part of literacy. And while you don't need to go and write the next Facebook application, you should be able to, in terms of definitional literacy, read basic scripts, understand it, maybe know how to go and tweak it. Because if you go to that highest level of design and create digital solutions, again, it doesn't mean you're going to go write Facebook or Google, but you're going to take probably a bunch of different components, put it together, and when you do that, you may need to go in the script and tweak it to make it work, and you should be able to understand basically what's going on, and really understand that algorithmic thinking. And so we do believe there's some basics. It's not, if you went to like sort of a language example, you don't need to be fluent, but yeah, you need to know how to order off the menu, find the bathroom, and do the basic things to get around an environment. In this case, it's a digital environment versus a physical environment.
What's the I'd have to bring it up, but in your article, you gave an example from was it PHP or JavaScript that you had people just basically tag and edit a little bit?
Yeah, I believe that's from George's class. I believe that's JavaScript. Yes.
Mhm. Very good, very good. I've been researching this for a couple of years, and every campus I go to, I ask if you were going to assign a language for all students to learn a computer programming language, which one should it be? And it's fun because usually a bitter religious war breaks out among the computer scientists. Yeah. It's got to be Java. No, it's got to be Python. No, Ruby. No, PHP.
Yeah.
But I like the way you put this, where they have to be. It's a basic understanding so they can get to algorithmic thinking. I mean,
Yeah,
elsewhere,
because the
Matt,
languages don't aren't as important. It's the understanding of how you can, understand the structure of it, can figure it out when something new comes out, because they're going to go change, right? 3 years ago, no one knew what the hell Ruby on Rails was, and if you look at my college experience, learning Pascal and C++. I mean, there's still some C++. I mean, C# is close, but Pascal and before me, talk to people that knew Fortran. That effectively, someone was joking with me the other day that when they were in college, they had taken Latin in high school and they needed to take that didn't qualify for their foreign language requirement, so they had to take actually a foreign language, and Fortran, qualified as a foreign language. I can't remember what
oh,
university, but this is back in the day. And I joke that Fortran is about as useful as Latin right today.
well, if you want, I could talk about the first language I learned. I learned
Right,
Fortran, Basic, COBOL, and Assembler in junior high.
right.
But if we're going to go that far back, we should really wrap things up. I think uh, elsewhere in your article you talked about the importance of computational thinking, and I think that's very very
Mhm.
important. Listen, we're at the end of the hour. We haven't had a chance to get into learning analytics or adaptive learning technologies. Can we bring you back later on so we can pursue those points?
Yeah, I would love to. We have a lot of work that's going on within adaptive and learning. And so would love to go and share that, and also share as we go and get the results of some of our pilots and tests that we're doing in those areas.
Well, if you guys publish anything on that, please let me know so I can
Sure.
link to it and research it. Listen, it's really inspiring listening to you answer the questions from the Future Transform community. It sounds like you're doing extraordinary stuff in a hurry, I'm really really glad to be able to listen and learn from what you're doing. Thank you so much for coming,
Oh, thanks for having me.
and we'll bring you back, and hopefully I'll see you in Anaheim.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Well, Zach, if you could bring up the final slide. I hate to cut things off. We are actually out of time. So let me just once again thank all of you for the terrific questions and the comments. And let me just point out a couple of things coming up next. So next week, the Future Trends Forum does not have a guest. Your guest is going to be me because I'm going to be in Iceland at a conference. And so I'm going to take a break in Reykjavik and give you an update on the Future Trends in Technology and Education report. So I'll give you an update on the latest in education and technology. So if you have questions or topics or themes that you want me to especially address, please get them to me. We'll look forward to that. In the meantime, we're continuing our science fiction reading together. We have finished Infomocracy, our third book. So again, this is a book club for looking at near future science fiction to get inspired and find interesting ideas about where education technology could be going. So today I launched a poll for the next book to read. There's a great list, a unique list. So already the voting has been proceeding in earnest. It's an election that I can actually feel good about. So please chime in and participate. If you want to hear more about the topics we've been talking about today, you can go to ftte.us, of course. Shindig.com will tell you everything you need to know about this excellent video platform. And let me thank everyone for coming. I'll be here for about another 5 minutes to chat with you guys informally if you're here. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. Thanks so much.